Hello, welcome to another edition of Issues with Jide. Here we talk about actions and inactions of those who shape our political and national landscape and how these impact us positively or otherwise. I'm Ibrahim Shita. Today on the show, big pressure mounts on Tinubu to free Nnamdi Kanu, and Southeast governors, senators want him freed. Also on the show, appeal court invalidates sack of 27 pro-Wike lawmakers. In the course of the program, we take our questions, but first, subscribe to our YouTube channel and drop your questions in the comment section. It's important to mention that we can only read comments with human names and the ones based on the subject matter. I have joining me via Zoom, the maestro himself, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju, all the way from Jaws. Good to see you, BKO.
Good evening, Ibrahim. Good evening to our viewers.
That's right. So let's begin by looking at Igbo leaders who are now beginning to sustain pressure on the federal government for the release of the embattled IPOB leader, Nnamdi Kanu, with a visit to the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, in Abuja. Also, the Southeast caucus in the House of Representatives have joined their Senate counterparts, Southeast governors, and others who are calling for his release. Do you feel this call is getting louder enough to get Mr. Kanu freed?
Well, it's, no one can predict exactly what's going on in the heart of our president. This matter is both, to many people, is both a legal as well as political and security matter. When the senators from the Southeast, led by Senator Yinaya Abaribe, former deputy governor of Abia State, and one of the longest serving senators in Nigeria today, held a closed-door meeting with the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi. The point that they made was that, one, it was unfortunate that Kanu's agitation has now been totally hijacked by hoodlums and other undesirable elements who have now been killing people in the name of agitation for freedom of Biafra. So, of course, I can hear you. Okay. So, when they met with the Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, behind closed doors, the senators led by Yinaya Abaribe, whom I described earlier as one of the longest serving senators in Nigeria today, pleaded that Nnamdi Kanu should be freed, that all charges brought against him by the federal government should be terminated. And Abaribe told the press that Nnamdi Kanu has agreed to a conditional release. He has agreed to abide by all conditions that may be put forward by the federal government for in exchange for his freedom. I said it before now that the Nnamdi Kanu that I've seen in recent weeks, especially after that interview, the impromptu interview that I granted in open court, he appeared to have softened up tremendously. In fact, he was talking at some point during that chat. He was saying that it was because he was in detention that some people have continued their subversive activities. So for Nnamdi Kanu to suddenly be against subversive activities against the government of Nigeria shows that he is tired of being detained. He wants to come out of detention and is ready to abide by conditions put forward by the federal government. Because in this case, the federal government holds the yam and the knife. Kanu is in a weakened position. He tried to use the courts to secure his freedom. It's clear that he's not going to, every effort that he made, at least up to this time, through the courts to get him released, have failed. He also suggested that he was ready to be under house arrest. He wants to come out of the detention facility of the DSS to be placed under house arrest. That also suggested that he was beginning to soften up his earlier rigid stance. But all of the efforts that he had made, all of the suggestions that he brought forward have amounted to nothing so far. Remember that Senator Ifeanyi Ubah and Eze Chukwuemeka of Enugu Aguleri went to see Kanu in detention and extracted not just a commitment, but a written directive from him that all sit at home must end immediately. Whether on Mondays or the days that is brought to court, he put it in writing and signed that it should not happen again in this house. So he's been demonstrating that he wants peace and that he's committed to peace. Whether the people who have put him in detention believe that is genuinely softening up, that is genuinely seeking peace, is a different kettle of fish. And recently, the governors of the Southeast promised to seek an audience with President Tinubu to also bring up the matter of Nnamdi Kanu, because some people have been accusing those governors and saying that those governors do not want Nnamdi Kanu to be freed for reasons best known to them. But now they have said that they would push for his release by having an audience with Mr. President on that matter. As far as Abaribe is concerned, the tension and acrimony that has engulfed the region since 2021 will become a thing of the past if Nnamdi Kanu is released. He also said that all political and religious leaders agree unanimously that Kanu should be released for peace to reign in the region. He is worried that the economy of the Southeast has continued to suffer because of insecurity, which reached a head in response to, reached a crescendo in response to Nnamdi Kanu's forceful rendition from Kenya and his detention in Nigeria. So a lot of these leaders from the Southeast, the governors, the House of Reps members, the senators, and religious leaders believe that dialogue and peaceful resolution of the matter is necessary at this time, and that it makes sense to release him so as to quell protests, violence, and calm this situation generally in the Southeast. They believe that the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu would contribute to overall political stability in Nigeria and improve relations between our central government and the people of the Southeast. And they are also convinced that some of the grievances that were triggered by his detention will definitely be addressed once the government releases him through a negotiated settlement of his matter. They are convinced that President Tinubu's government would earn greater legitimacy if the president agrees to a political solution, in this case, the release of Nnamdi Kanu. That is where we are on this matter. I've said in the past that these kind of matters are sometimes resolved amicably, and are sometimes resolved outside of the legal system. And the Constitution also permits a negotiated settlement outside of the courts. And I believe that the judge handling the case will not get in the way of an amicable settlement. But I also agree with the Attorney General of the Federation that it is not within his powers to declare a nolle prosequi. The mandate that he has is to prosecute Kanu and secure justice in the final analysis. And he's working through the special counsel, Awomolo San. So until the political leaders give that directive, the political leaders led by the president give that directive, there's nothing the Attorney General or the president can do. But the Attorney General has powers as given to him by the Constitution to discontinue any criminal matter. But you and I know that in this case, he cannot simply discontinue a criminal matter of the magnitude brought against Nnamdi Kanu, except his principal, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, agrees to, yes, because there could be serious implications for his release. There could be serious implications. We may say
that's exactly. Sorry, BK, to butt in. That's exactly where I'm going, because just like you said, some of the comments I've actually read here, people are still very much divided over this call for, to free Mr. Kanu. But are there any potential political consequences for President Tinubu if he decides to release or maintain Kanu's detention, considering the diverse interests at play?
Well, it all depends on Nnamdi Kanu himself. What is he prepared to do? Is he prepared to go the whole hog to ensure that peace, which got worse in the insecurity which got worse in the Southeast in the aftermath of his detention, is eased significantly? What are the steps that he's prepared to take? If they are going to negotiate with him, then the government will come up with some steps, some conditions that they want him to fulfill. What will he do to push the needle of peace? How far can he go? Will he be prepared to give up his armed struggle against the Nigerian state? Will he be prepared to give up his fight for the freedom of Biafra, for the independence of Biafra as he's been championing? Will he simply get freedom and refuse to abide by the stipulated conditions? You know, with him, they have to be very careful. And I'm sure that government will want to be in a very big position of strength in the aftermath of Nnamdi Kanu's release. Otherwise, if things do not improve, if insecurity even gets worse, for example, we do not pray that happens. If it gets worse after his release, then many people will condemn the government. Many people would slam the government for releasing Nnamdi Kanu, and some could even blame him if, for example, insecurity worsens in the aftermath of his release. And people like Simon Ekpa, who calls himself the Prime Minister of the Biafra government in exile, they are not they are not excited about the prospect of Nnamdi Kanu being released from detention. And it's the fact that in spite of Nnamdi Kanu demanding that sit at home should no longer happen in any parts of the Southeast. This is a civil disobedience initiative that he came up with, or that his group came up with. But today, nobody is listening to the directive of Nnamdi Kanu. That is to tell you that the faction of IPOB, as represented by Simon Ekpa, may actually frustrate attempts at ensuring calmness in the Southeast, even after Nnamdi Kanu is freed. And if we do not see clear signs of improvement in the security situation in the Southeast, then people will condemn the government, people will blame the government for releasing Nnamdi Kanu. So the government would want to weigh all of these scenarios, look at all of these scenarios, and ask itself whether it makes sense to release Nnamdi Kanu at this time. But what we cannot deny is the fact that the pressure is mounting seriously on our president. There is no guarantee that the president will not eventually cave into pressure. I'm not predicting that I will cave into pressure. I mean, I'm not in the rightful position to predict his actions, but what I can report is that the pressure is mounting tremendously from both within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. And no one can say how this will all end up. The president may just consider releasing him if he will agree to, I'm sure, very stiff conditions that the government will come up with.
That's right. Let me take one or two comments and then we'll move on to our second topic. Banji Okosoto says, eagerly waiting for... Okay, so Mohammed S. Sabiu says, Nnamdi Kanu cannot be released by President Tinubu. Taiwo Odunade says, BKO has always believed it's only political solution that will help Nnamdi Kanu. Nelson Adufe says, once Nnamdi Kanu is released, then all hardened criminals should also be released because Kanu is not an activist, but an outlaw who took up arms against his country and killed several people, allegedly killed several people, you should say. Mustafa Dauda says, don't release him, he will become a nuisance in Nigeria. And then there are so many, several comments here saying that Nnamdi Kanu should not be released, but others also, of the opinion that Nnamdi Kanu did not make any attempt or did not show any body language for him to be released because of the conditions, set for him to, accede to in order for him to be released. But then the debate continues to swell, and then we'll definitely monitor it as it goes on. But we have to change tact, PKO.
Yes, it's true that he has not spoken.
Yeah.
Well, he has not said anything, but Senator Abaribe is one of the most credible political leaders in our country. He has integrity, is well respected, and he said he met Nnamdi Kanu in the DSS detention facility, and that Nnamdi Kanu told him that any condition that they bring up, he is ready to abide by it. So this clearly sends a signal that he wants to come out of detention by any means possible, and he will be ready to abide by conditions put forward by the Nigerian government, just so that he can get out of the detention. Now, how do we then hold him to those to the promises that he makes?
That remains to be seen.
That is the issue, because sometimes these things are not easy to predict. A person who wants to get out of a facility, detention facility, will make big promises.
Absolutely.
But
we're out of time.
The government has to find a way.
Right.
Will it be released for him to travel out of Nigeria, or released to remain here and help defeat the insecurity in the southeast? If you will agree,
very big question.
If you will agree to remain here and help us defeat that insecurity, then I'm all for his freedom.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. But we need to change tack, because Appeal Court has invalidated the sack of 27 Pro-Wike lawmakers. Can you help us quickly analyze the potential consequences of this ruling on the balance of power within the Rivers State House of Assembly and the state's political dynamics?
Yeah, the matter is far from being resolved. What the court merely affirmed was that the lower court was wrong in entertaining the matter in the first place, because the appeal court took the position that it is only the Federal High Court that has jurisdiction to entertain such a matter. And he cited the Constitution in his 68 page judgment. As far as the matter is concerned, the appeal court was convinced that the Federal High Court is the one that has jurisdiction on the matter, and that what happened amounted to judicial overreach by the State High Court. It is such a terrible thing that in our country, judges who are custodians of the law continue to take actions outside of their jurisdictional competence. What the court decided was that the status quo remains. And what was the status quo? The status quo has to do with what happened before they went to court. And if you ask me, the 27 lawmakers who are deemed to have lost their seats because they defected, as far as this judgment is concerned, they are still members. Yes, they are still members of the Rivers State House of Assembly. Amaiwule's prayers, I found some of Amaiwule's prayers interesting. He sought an order restraining Okojombo from parading himself as speaker. An order setting aside purported meetings, sittings, proceedings, or deliberations of the assembly presided over by Okojombo with only 2 members in attendance. An order setting aside actions, steps, decisions, and all resolutions of the purported assembly presided over by Okojombo. You all recall that Okojombo as speaker, leading 2 others, screened commissioners and passed them fit. The same person has even recently screened caretaker committee chairman. When a court rules that you had no jurisdiction to entertain a matter, it means that all orders that you have taken as a court, as a judge, all those orders amount to nothing. So, basically speaking, the order declaring the seats of those 27 lawmakers vacant in the eyes of the law remains incompetent and is of no effect whatsoever. But the court did not make any decision on whether Amaiwule can remain speaker or whether all of the actions taken by Okojombo had been set aside. What we will see in the days to come is a court that has the jurisdiction to entertain the matter in the first place. We could see that case start from the beginning. It could be the judgment that the Supreme Court will take that the Federal High Court, that the case should be sent back for the Federal High Court to try it, since the appeal court did not make consequential orders by way of saying, okay, Okojombo, you are not the speaker. The speaker now is Amaiwule, who all along had been the speaker. But one thing is clear: when a court lacks jurisdiction to entertain a matter, the implication is that the court also lacks the jurisdiction to exercise the power that it has exercised. Is there and the Constitution, section 272, subsection 3. Only the Federal High Court should have entertained this matter. So, in this case, it means that the court shouldn't have entertained that matter in the first place. And it means that the order that court gave, declaring those seats vacant, affirming that those 27 lawmakers, that means the interlocutory injunction that the Okojombo and others sought, which the court granted, affirming that Martin Amaiwule and others are no longer members of the House of Assembly. It means that that order does not exist. In the eyes of the law, that order does not exist. Because if you do not have jurisdiction, you have no power to give any form of order, whether it's an interlocutory order, status quo ante and all that. You are not the appropriate court to sit in judgment on that matter. And because you are not an appropriate court, any order that you give amounts to nothing. That is why those who have interpreted this judgment have interpreted it to mean that the order setting aside the declaration of the seats of those 27 lawmakers vacant is null and void and of no effect whatsoever. So initially, we saw the governor's friends saying that that judgment actually favored them. But if it favored you, why did you then go to appeal to the Supreme Court? Why did you go before the Supreme Court to appeal? One terrible thing happening in our country these days is that a court gives a judgment. Lawyers and other people will now be misinterpreting the judgment of the court. Sometimes, even when they've not seen the certified true copy, when they are not familiar with the proceedings of the court. So these days, we become confused because you see all kinds of funny interpretations of a judgment that a court gave. But it is clear that you cannot build something on nothing. If you didn't have jurisdiction to entertain a matter, you have no business entertaining that matter. It amounts to judicial irresponsibility and judicial rascality to agree to try a matter about which you have no jurisdiction. And if you do that, there are remedies.
That's right.
One of such remedies is for a superior court to look at that matter and then take a decision. And this is what we have seen now. The appeal court cited the Constitution copiously and affirmed that the High Court in Port Harcourt shouldn't have entertained that matter. And having not been qualified to entertain the matter, whatever decision, whatever order it made amounts to nothing because you cannot build anything on nothing. I think we have not seen the final resolution of this matter. The Supreme Court, the final court in the land, will take a decision in due course since an appeal has been filed. So I'm sure that it is when that appeal has been filed, when the Supreme Court decides that we will know where we are going. Because as far as the governor is concerned, he is happy to have an assembly of 3 persons deciding on all kinds of matters before it. But if the final court rules that Amewule remains the speaker, then it could also mean, depending on the consequential order given by the Superior Court, it could also mean that all of the decisions taken by the Amewule, by the 3-man assembly will be rendered invalid. But
that's right.
We are waiting to see what happens in the coming days.
Okay, Biko, because of our time, I really do not know the next question to ask you because you've answered virtually everything. But let me quickly take these 2 comments and I ask you the final question because of our time. Nelson Adife says, Biko, the appeal court is seriously right. I want to advise that lawyers should always advise their clients well. Why should a federal high court matter be taken to the Supreme Court? The 25 lawmakers should return to their job. He now went on to say BKO needs to lecture some judges and lawyers equally. His analysis on this matter is so clear. Taiwo Odunlade says these guys are still members of Rivers State House of Assembly. Okojombo and Edison Ehie were already suspended by these 27 lawmakers. And that brings me to the last question, BKO. Some members of the House of Representatives, led by Ikenga Ugochinyere, they've said that the judgment of the Court of Appeal on the political crisis in Rivers State has not changed the situation in the state, that the court only talked about, they only ruled on the jurisdiction. So, meaning that the 27 lawmakers remain suspended. That's the position of Ikenga Oguchiere. So I want you to respond to this in relation to how you see this situation evolving in the coming weeks and months, and what key factors do you think will influence this trajectory? We have just a few seconds. I mean, just about a minute or two to go, Ikeo.
Well, if, as I said earlier, if you are not qualified, if you did not have jurisdictional power to entertain a matter, and you proceeded to entertain that matter, and you even gave orders, by law, everything that you did amounts to nothing, which means that those guys have not been suspended. They are still members of the Rivers State House of Assembly. The truth is, you cannot build something on nothing. We want a resolution of this matter. We can't have a situation in which 3 individuals will be representing
the legislature,
the entire state in the House of Assembly. People like Ugo Chinyere are not bothered because they are basically playing politics. As far as they are concerned, it doesn't matter that it's a terrible precedent that is being set for just 3 individuals, the speaker and 2 others, to be running an House of Assembly. And when people continually say those guys have lost their seats, the question you ask is, are the people saying that judges? I've used an analogy before that other people have used. We know that the law says if you kill a person, you must be killed. Does it mean that in our country, because the law says you must be killed if you kill a person, that we will not take a person before a court of law and simply cut that person's neck? No. It is the courts and not Ugo Chinyere and other people that can determine whether those guys have lost their seats. That is the structure. That is the way it has always been done. People can make all kinds of comments. They can say what they like. They are not the courts. Lawyers can sit in their chambers and deliberately misunderstand or twist judgments of court. It doesn't turn you to a judge. It doesn't turn you to a judge. You can call the pressmen, you can gather yourselves as federal lawmakers and say all kinds of things, but you are not the judge. You are not a court of law. Only a competent court of law can declare the seats of those guys vacant. People can express their opinions, but at the end of the day, it is the courts that will determine whether those guys have lost their seats or not. So saying, they have lost their seats, say they've not, how? It is only the courts that can say that. And Ugo Chinyere does not constitute a court. He's just an individual. Even if he summons all the members of the National Assembly, they do not constitute a court.
That's right.
It is the courts that will determine this matter. That's the way it should be. And that's the way it will be in the final analysis. If the court rules in favor of the minority lawmakers, that's not my problem. If the court gives it to Amewule and others, it's not my problem. All I want is to see peace happen see peace in Rivers State and every part of Nigeria. People pouring petrol into the fire for political gains. They know that they are doing what is wrong. Absolutely. And I expect them to change in the interest of all of us.
That's right. Well, because of our time, that's our show for today's edition of Issues with Jide. Special thanks to you, Babajide Kolade-Otitoju, for those insightful analyses, as always, all the way from Jos.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, esteemed viewers. God bless you all. We'll do this again next week, by God's grace.
That's right. And someone is actually saying that he also misses you on Journalist Hangout, and I hope that you'll be back any time soon. Okay, that's Promise Emmanuel saying, Jide, I miss you on Journalist Hangout. Very soon, Jide will be back.
I'll be back tomorrow by God's grace.
That's right. God bring you safely. All right, and
Amen.
thanks to our audience for keeping our company on every edition. You can see the program again anytime by subscribing to our YouTube channel, TVC News Nigeria. Click on the subscribe button to get the latest information. You can also follow us on our social media platforms at TVC News NG. I'm also at Ibrahim_Shita. On behalf of the rest of the team, I'm Ibrahim Shita. See you again next edition. Bye for now.